Good afternoon, children. We were learning about classifying flowers on the basis of different criteria. And which are the different criteria based on which we already learned to classify? Meryl?
Based on the based on the symmetry, based on the sex organs present, based on the number of floral appendages, and based on the position of the sex organs in thalamus.
And then whether based on whether they have bracts or not, then based on symmetry. So all that we learned. And then we also learned about the 4 different worlds of a flower. Which are the 4 different worlds, Alina? The 4 different worlds of a flower. Yes. Can't hear. Unmute. Can't hear. Nimida?
Ma'am, calyx, corolla, androecium
and gynoecium. Calyx, corolla, androecium and gynoecium. And we learned about calyx and corolla. Calyx includes sepals. And what is the function of sepal? What function do they perform? Eva, give me the function of sepals.
Sepals protect the flower in the bud stage.
Okay. And petals? Corolla includes the petals. And what is the function, Emilyn?
It's bright colored, so they attract insects for pollination.
Pollination. So they will attract insects for pollination. So just a minute. Now let's continue. And we were learning about, we started with aestivation. Aestivation is the mode of arrangement of sepals and petals with respect to the other worlds. You know, there are 4 worlds of a flower: androecium, gynoecium, petals and sepals. So the mode of arrangement of sepals or petals with respect to the other worlds of the flower is known as aestivation. And 4 types are there: valvate, twisted, imbricate and vexillary. We'll start with the first one, valvate aestivation. In valvate aestivation, sepals or petals, they are arranged in such a way that they just touch each other at the margin, but there is no overlapping. It doesn't overlap, but they are arranged in such a way that each floral appendage is touching the other, just touching the other without overlapping. Such an arrangement is known as valvate. So here you can see this indicates the floral appendage. It is just touching the margin of the other appendage, but it's not overlapping. You cannot find any overlapping of the sepals or petals. When sepals or petals in a whorl just touch each other at the margin without overlapping, you can call this arrangement of this aestivation as valvate aestivation. So aestivation is the arrangement of petals and sepals. It's the arrangement of petals and sepals with respect to other appendages or other layers or other whorls in a flower. And there are different types of aestivation. Which are the 4 types? Valvate. Tell me, children. Valvate, imbricate, vexillary and just a minute. I'll take the slide. Once again, valvate aestivation means here the sepals and petals are arranged in such a way that they just touch each other at the margin, but there is no overlapping. The petals or sepals are not overlapping each other. Instead, they are just arranged in such a way that they just touch one another at the margin. Example is Calotropis. Calotropis is a medicinal plant. Calotropis is an example of a flower that exhibit valvate aestivation. Sepals and petals in a flower, they just touch one another at the margin without overlapping. Children, you should know the symbolic representation of this aestivation. So that can come and you will be asked to identify the type of aestivation. So it is clear from the figure that the floral appendages are not overlapping, but they just touch one another at the margin. Example, Calotropis. And the second one is imbricate aestivation. So here you can find the margins of sepals and petals, they are overlapping one another. So you can find overlapping, but it is not in any particular fashion or any particular pattern. And such an aestivation is known as imbricate aestivation. So the margins of sepals and petals, they overlap one another, but not in any particular fashion. So here you can see this one, this petal or sepal is overlapping this one, and this is overlapping this one. This one is overlapping this one as well as the other one, overlapping two petals or two floral appendages on either side. Once again, I will show. Let me erase. See, if you take this one, yes. If you see this one, you can see one margin is overlapping and the other margin is being overlapped by the other one. Whereas it take this case, both the sides, both the margins are overlapping other two petals. Here one is being overlapped, one is overlapping the other floral appendage. Here both of them are inside and this particular appendage is being overlapped by the other two petals. So it is overlapping you can find, but that is not in any particular fashion. Here in the first case, in valvate, I said no overlapping of the margins are taking place. They are just touching one another at the margin, but they don't overlap. No overlapping in the case of valvate aestivation. But when it comes to imbricate aestivation, the margins of sepals or petals, they overlap one another. But this overlapping is not taking place in any particular pattern. Some floral appendages are being overlapped, some are not getting overlapped. One margin is overlapped, other one is not getting overlapped. So that not in any particular fashion, but overlapping is happening. The floral appendages, their margins are overlapping the other floral appendages, but that is not in any particular fashion. Cassia and Gulmohar are examples for imbricate aestivation. When I explain the next one, you will understand why I said not in any particular direction. See the next one. Twisted aestivation. Here one margin of the appendage overlaps that of the next one. So this is in a particular fashion. If you see closely, you will understand. Take the case of the first one. This is one margin is overlapping the other, only one margin. For each floral appendage, only one margin is overlapping the other. Can you see? One margin is overlapping the other floral appendage, whereas the other margin is being overlapped by the other floral appendage. One is inside and one is outside. Each floral appendage, you just see, one is going inside and one is outside. So that what is shown as outside, this is shown or this indicates overlapping. Only one margin is overlapping the other one, not both the margins. So here it is taking place in a particular fashion, whereas in the previous one, overlapping is taking place, but not in any particular fashion. In twisted, there is a particular fashion or pattern by means of which they are getting overlapped. In all the petals or sepals, this can be petals or sepals, see each one, only one margin is overlapping the other one. One inside and one outside. Everywhere you can see one margin is inside, one margin is outside. See, This is outside, whereas the other margin is inside. For this one also, one margin is outside, the other one is inside. So see, everywhere it is like that. So that is a particular pattern. It's in a particular pattern that the overlapping has taken place. If one margin of the appendage overlaps that of the next one, only one margin of the appendage overlaps that of the other one, you can call it as twisted aestivation. Examples: cotton, cassia, gulmohar. So in all these, you can see twisted aestivation. Twisted aestivation. I'll repeat all the three that we discussed so far. In the first case, valvate aestivation, sepals or petals in a word, they just touch each other without any overlapping. They are not overlapping. One margin is not overlapping, or the margins of the floral appendages are not overlapping the other. They just touch each other at the margin without any overlapping. Example, Calotropis. And then in the next one, imbricate aestivation. I told that here the margins are overlapping. The margins of sepals or petals are overlapping one another, but not in any particular pattern. And here you can see in some cases both the margins inside, in some cases one margin outside, one margin inside. Can you see? See here, both the margins inside. Here one margin outside, one inside. Here both the margins are outside, one inside and one outside. Here also one inside and one outside. So that overlapping is there, but not in any particular pattern. So that is imbricate aestivation.
Example for
Pardon?
is there
Earlier for breaking, you sent by chat. Send me a message. I will check the chat box. I'm not able to follow what you're saying. Cassia and Gulmohar. Whereas in twisted aestivation. Twisted aestivation also you can find overlapping. In the first one, there was no overlapping. But in imbricate and twisted aestivations, overlapping is there. And in twisted aestivation, the overlapping is taking place in a particular pattern. Petals and sepals, or petals or sepals, you can find one of the margin. One margin is overlapping that of the other. And examples, cotton, cassia and gulmohar. Okay. Twisted aestivation. Here one margin of the appendage overlaps that of the next one and so on. As in cotton and China rose, and you call it as twisted aestivation. Twisted aestivation, China rose, cotton. That is twisted aestivation. Examples, China rose and cotton. Once again, here one margin of the appendage overlaps that of the next one. Just one margin is overlapping that of the other one, and that will be continued. It will be continued, and such an arrangement or such an aestivation is known as twisted. Example, China rose and cotton. Now we are moving on to the last one. Vexillary or papillonaceous aestivation, and this is found in pea, beans, etc. There'll be 5 petals altogether. Those flowers showing vexillary or papillonaceous found in pea, beans, flowers of pea and beans. You can find this type of aestivation, and here there'll be 5 petals. There'll be 5 petals. This is 1, 2, 3, then 2 small keels. 2, 3, 4, and 5. So altogether there'll be 5 petals. The largest one, this is known as standard. The standard petal, one big petal known as standard petal. Then there are 2 wings, the lateral petals, which are present on the side. So beneath the Beneath the standard petal, you can find two lateral wings. Two lateral wings, or these are also petals. And then two more petals are there, which you call as keel. These two petals are known as keel. These are wings. And this one is the standard. Standard one is the largest one. As you can see in the figure, the largest one or the standard is overlapping. The standard is overlapping. This is a standard one. This is overlapping the two lateral petals known as wings, and which in turn is overlapping two smaller petals known as keel. So standard, wing and keel. Once again, in vexillary or papillonaceous aestivation, 5 petals. These flowers will have 5 petals. There will be one large petal which you call as standard. The standard will be overlapping 2 wings, and those wings will be overlapping the 2 smallest petals known as keels. 2 anterior petals, you call them as keels. So keels, wings and standard together make up vexillary aestivation. The standard petal is the largest. It will be overlapping 2 lateral petals known as wings. These wings will be overlapping 2 smallest petals found in the anterior side, and you call them as keel. And examples, pea and bean. These are the different types of aestivation. Once again, vexillary or papillonaceous aestivation. Here 5 petals are there, standard, wings and keel. Standard is the largest petal, and standard petal will be overlapping 2 lateral petals which are known as wings. And these wings will be further overlapping the 2 smallest petals present on the anterior side, which you call as keel. And such an arrangement is found in pea and bean flowers. This aestivation is known as vexillary or papillonaceous aestivation. So seeing the symbolic representation, you should be able to identify. So if this alone is given, if that particular figure alone is given, you should identify. This is vexillary aestivation. It is easy to identify when compared to the other 3 types. Other 3 types, you might get confused, but this is very clear. A standard petal, 2 wings, and 2 smaller petals known as keel. So once again, vexillary or papillonaceous aestivation, 5 petals are there. The largest petal is known as standard petal, which will be overlapping 2 lateral petals. Lateral means present on the sides, which you call as wings. And wings will be further overlapping 2 small petals present on the anterior side. You call them as keel. Example, pea and beans. And then the previous one, we'll begin with the definition for aestivation. Mode of arrangement of sepals or petals with respect to other members of the world is known as aestivation. There are 4 types: valvate, twisted, imbricate, vexillary. In valvate, the floral appendages, petal or sepal, they don't overlap. They just touch each other at the margin without overlapping. They just touch one another at the margin without overlapping. That is known as valvate aestivation. Example, calotropis. Then we learned about imbricate aestivation. In imbricate aestivation, margins of sepals and petals, they overlap. But this overlapping is not in any particular pattern or in any particular direction. Then you call it as imbricate aestivation. Cassia and Gulmohar. Then about twisted aestivation. So here also there is overlapping, but here the overlapping is taking place in a particular pattern. And here margin of the appendage. One margin of the appendage will overlap that of the next one. And this pattern is continued. One margin, just one margin of the appendage will be overlapping the next one. And next floral appendage also continues the same pattern. One margin will be overlapping the other. Again, the third one also. Again, this continues. All the petals or sepals will be following the same pattern. Just one margin will be overlapping that of the other. Example, hibiscus or even China rose. China rose or hibiscus can be given as the example. And finally, vexillary or papillonaceous aestivation. Here there are 5 petals, standard, wings and keel. Standard will be overlapping the 2 lateral petals, which in turn overlap keel. The 2 smallest petals found at the anterior side. Any doubt, children? Example, pea and beans. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, then we can quickly recap. Okay. Who will start? Basma? Basma, are you there? Anjana? Abhinav?
Ma'am.
Yes. Tell me about aestivation. What is meant by aestivation?
The mode of arrangement of sepals or petals with respect to other wall.
Other whorls of the flower. Okay. What are the 4 types? What are the 4 types? Analysts? What are the 4 types of aestivation? 4 types.
Valvate, imbricate, twisted.
Vexillary. What is the other name for vexillary aestivation? Papillonaceous aestivation. Okay. Tell me about valvate aestivation, Irene, Basma. If you are listening to me, just leave me a message so that I can ensure that you people are listening. You people are there on the other side. Leave me a message. Basma, Irene, Shreya. Audio issue. Then how did you hear that I called your name? Or how did you come to know that I had called your name? Means from there you have difficulty in speaking? Okay. Rectify it as early as possible. Abhinav? Basma? What is the point in joining like this, children? Alina, Jason? Alina? All those whose videos are off, I'm going to contact the parents. Alina, Jason? Alina? Children, if you have some difficulty in turning the video on, you can respond, no? When I'm calling out your name, you can just say yes, or you can leave a message.
Ma'am,
Okay.
ma'am, for the past 2 months, I'm in my mother's house, ma'am. Here network is not
Okay, but you
proper.
responded, no? When I asked you the question, you responded. So I can understand that you are listening. You are there on the other side. Alina, Jason, tell me about valvate aestivation. She's not there. Jyoti, Abhinav. Then why you people are joining? If you cannot interact, if you cannot respond, it's better to see the recorded class, no? If you cannot respond. Malavika, Vibin.
Yes, ma'am.
Tell me about valvate aestivation.
When the sepals of petals in the world touch one another just in the margin
Without
without overlapping.
is known as
Valvate aestivation.
example.
Example,
Starting with C.
calotropes.
Calotropis. Okay. Shabari, imbricate.
And the margins of sepals or petals overlap one another, but not in a particular direction.
Example?
China rose.
China rose for imbricate. What was the example I gave for imbricate children? Valentina? Cassia and Gulmohar. Okay. And twisted? Sanjana?
One margin of the appendage overlaps the next one, and so on.
Once again? Once again?
The one margin of the appendage overlaps the next one, and so on.
And it continues like that. Example is China rose. Papillonaceous or vexillary aestivation, Aditya Dev?
There are 5 petals. The largest one overlap the lateral.
What do you call the largest one?
Standard.
It will overlap?
Lateral wings. And it will overlap the...
In turn overlap the two?
Smallest keel.
Smallest keel or smallest petals or smallest anterior petals known as keel, and that is known as vexillary aestivation. An example, Devika?
Pea and beans.
Pea and beans. So shall we continue? We have 10 more minutes. Next, we are continuing with the third world. So petals and sepals we already completed, and we learned about the mode of arrangement of petals or sepals with respect to the other worlds. And now we are again continuing with the parts of a flower. ANDROECIUM. Here you can see ANDROECIUM. ANDROECIUM consists of stamens. ANDROECIUM is made up of stamens, and each stamen is having, just a minute. ANDROECIUM, as you had learned in lower classes, it consists of stamens. Stamen has got two parts, anther and filament. A lobed structure at the tip is present, which you call as anther, and it is followed by a stalk-like structure, which you call as filament. Anther is the lobed structure at the tip, which is followed by a stalk-like structure known as filament. And inside the anther, pollen sac will be present, and the pollen sac will be filled with pollen grains. And each pollen grain consists of two male gametes. In class 10, you had learned about it. So once again, ANDROECIUM consists of stamens, and each stamen has got two main parts, a lobed structure at the tip, you call it as anther, and a stalk-like structure known as filament. Inside the anther, pollen sacs, or inside this lobe, you can find pollen sac, and pollen sac contain pollen grains. Pollen sac contains pollen grains, and each pollen grain has got two male gametes. And here you can see the classification of stamens based on its attachment. Epipetalous, epiphyllous. Epipetalous and epiphyllous stamens. Let's see what is the difference between these two. Now you should not get confused between gamopetalous, polypetalous. Another term you're learning, epipetalous. Gamopetalous means petals are united. Polypetalous, petals are free. And here it is epipetalous. In epipetalous stamen, The stamens are attached to petals. When stamens are attached to petals, you call it as epipetalous condition. In certain flowers, see here you can find epipetalous. So the stamens are very closely associated, or it is attached to the petals. As you can see in this particular figure, brinjal, it's a flower of brinjal. Okay, so this is the flower of brinjal, and there you can find the stamens are attached to the petal. So such a condition is known as epipetalous. Epipetalous stamen. Epipetalous stamen means stamens are attached to the petals. And we also learned about perianth. When we discussed about petals, we had also discussed about perianth. Anybody is remembering what is perianth? In passion fruit, and I told you in water lily you can find water lily, lotus and all. Perianth is present. What is perianth? Yes, anybody? Ah, yes, Emmeline.
When calyx and
Yes, when petals and sepals are not distinct from one another. We cannot differentiate both. So petals and sepals, when they are not distinct, you call them as perianth. So when it is attached to the perianth, then you call it as epiphyllous stamen. So epipetalous and epiphyllous, two types of stamens. Stamens can be classified based on how they are attached. If they are attached to the petals, you can call it as epipetalous. If they are attached to this is lily, not water lily, just lily. And in this lily plant, you can see they are attached to the perianth. Here, the petals or sepals, instead of petals and sepals, we call it together as perianth. So when it is attached to the perianth, you call the stamens as epiphyllous. Epipetalous, epiphyllous stamens. Now, these stamens can be free. So the stamens can be free, not united, not joined together. Then you call it as polyandrous. So remember the term androus, androecium, stamens, polypetalous. When petals are free, you call it as polypetalous. When stamens are free, you're not calling it as polystamen, but polyandrous, androecium. So indicating androecium, it is written as polyandrous, or it can be united, either free or united. Either free or united. Sometimes the different stamens will be free, or they can be united. And when they are united, when they are joined together, in certain flowers, for example, in China rose, just one bundle of stamens. Stamens are joined together and they form a single bundle. In the case of China rose, and when they form two bundles, you call it as diadelphous. Example P. Sometimes many bundles. In citrus fruits, stamen forms several bundles. Then you call it as polyadelphous. Once again, I will repeat. We were learning about the classification of stamens on the basis of whether they are free or whether they are united, and if they are attached to the petals or perianth. So depending upon that, we learn the classification of stamens. So the first criterion for classifying stamen is where they are attached. If they are attached to the petals, you call the stamens as epipetalous. If they are attached to the perianth, you call it as epiphyllous. Then, depending upon whether they are united or free, so sometimes they can be free. Each stamen can be free, not joined together. And in majority of the cases, these stamens are united. When they are united, they can form different bundles. Sometimes they form just one bundle of stamens. So in that case, you call it as monadelphous, single, monadelphous, single bundle of stamens. And when they are forming two bundles, diadelphous. When they are forming several bundles, polyadelphous. So that is the classification of stamens based on the number of bundles. See, this is just a single bundle. Here you can see two different bundles of stamens, and here you can see so many bundles are there, several bundles, and that is found in citrus flowers. Citrus flowers, polyadelphous condition of stamens, and in pea plant, two bundles, and in China rose or hibiscus, you can find a single bundle of stamens. So many new terms you are learning now. Finding it confusing? Easy to understand, difficult to memorize. But relate it, understand the meaning and learn. Okay? You should not get confused between epipetalous, polypetalous, gamopetalous, epiphyllous. So make it thorough. Okay? Epicephalous, polycephalous, so many you're going to learn, not epicephalous, epipetalous, and polycephalous, then gamocephalous, polypetalous. So in order to avoid confusion, it is easy to understand, but you will find it a little difficult to memorize. So repeated learning can solve the problem. Okay, we'll continue next class. Yes, no doubts, no? You're following, no? At least shake your head. You will not speak, I know. Yes, you won't say.
Yes,
Are
ma'am.
you- Just to keep my heart, at least you say no, yes or no. No also is acceptable. Don't think that I will accept only yes. It's not like that. If you're not following, you can feel free and tell. Yes or no? I will not leave you until and unless you say yes or no. Can you follow? Ah.
Yes, ma'am.
See, you can say whether some problems, whether you're finding it difficult or you want a particular topic to be repeated. Don't feel hesitant. You can feel free and say that this topic we did not understand, but not after completing the chapter. And once I proceeded to the next chapter, don't tell that first line of the previous chapter I did not understand. As we are learning, as we are discussing, you may tell we can repeat it again. Okay. So we'll wind up. Thank you, children.